And probably, presumably, Thomas and Ruth will be the only ones ever watching this. Although I have 27 followers on YouTube.
Whoa.
Who randomly is, I don't understand at all.
I wonder who the people are that you mentioned.
Don't know who these people are. I'm assuming some of them are your parents. So we are back around in time to Greece. When I did this 3 years ago, I did Greece and Rome in 1 year. And this was unsatisfactory to me because there was an awful lot of stuff we didn't need to read and that's important and frankly interesting in my opinion. And also an important part of the Roman year is the early church. And I really didn't have time. Now, Raymond, this is your last year, right? You're a senior, so have to do Roman. You can watch videos. You could be one of my followers. No, it's all right. He's like, yeah, sure. No, it's okay. So I decided to split it into 2 years because if you think about it, this year together, we're going to talk about stuff from 2000 BC all the way up to about 300 BC. That's 1,700 years of history. And then to add on to it another 600, 700 years, that's no. If you say there's been roughly, 5,000, 6,000 years of history, then we ought to spend comparable amounts of time in each year. So we are going to spend the year with Greece. What is so great about Greece? Like, why am I making you spend a year in Greece?
I guess Greece was kind of like where a lot of philosophers came from. A lot of more like what's that word? Just a lot of more I guess the deep.
Okay.
I guess.
It really was the birth of philosophy. The first people who started, as far as we know, because it depends on if they wrote it down or not. We can't say they're the first people who thought about this. Also in China, there was philosophical thought. But for us in the West, this was the first time people stopped saying, how am I going to make a living and what am I going to eat for supper? And started asking, what is the universe made of and why am I here and how did we get here and what's the point of being here? And of course, these people did not have the revelation, the special revelation of God through his prophets and through scripture. But some of them came remarkably close to answering some of those questions in a biblical way. Some of them really did not. Some of them were really, really off. But there have been philosophical developments, but it could be argued that every question there is to ask got asked and speculated on by the Greeks. So it's a good place to start. What else do we get from Greece? What are we the inheritors of from Greece, from their civilization?
I guess their inventions.
Okay, scientists. There were a lot of Greek scientists. It was a Greek who first, very accurately, calculated how big around the world is. He wasn't that far off, using, shadows and triangles and stuff. There's a reason I don't teach a math class, okay? I did it. I did it once for myself. I did it another time with my kids. I shouldn't say that. I'm kind of done with the whole triangulating shadows and finding out the distance of things. Not going to be doing that. But they did. What else do we inherit?
Our government style?
Our government. Greece and Rome together. Greece, as far as we know, Athens was the first place to experiment with a democracy, with letting people vote and choose for themselves. It was very limited. It was only male citizens, and it was maybe 6,000 people were eligible. But it was a direct democracy. In other words, every single issue, everybody comes and votes. If we did that in this country, on every single issue, that would be a nightmare. Just look at the presidential elections. How, if we came out and voted for every single thing. So we have a republic, which we'll talk about when we talk about Rome. But yes, another thing I'm thinking of, is art. Look at, like the Supreme Court Justice building. That we have Washington, D.C. How many of you have been to Washington, D.C.? You're lucky. I've never been to Washington, D.C. But I hear tell, and I see pictures, that it is full of buildings that look like Greek temples, Greek monuments, right? So architecture, and also Roman. Romans got a lot of their stuff from Greece. So we're the inheritors of a lot of this, and it makes sense to spend a year with them. Did you all get a chance to listen to or read mythology over the summer? Okay? Probably a lot of that was not new. Like, was most of it stuff you were familiar with already? Okay. That's good. That's because your parents are good schoolers who have you read the right books. Also because some of you were made to read them. In Neil's case, a couple of years ago with me, and Adriana's case. So I'm not going to blow by blow go through Edith Hamilton's mythology today. It pretty much stands on its own. But do you have any observations in general about Greek gods, Greek religion?
Greeks were
Yeah.
Greeks couldn't really decide how many there actually
Okay.
were.
There's a bunch of them. How do they feel about each other?
They tolerate each other sometimes.
Yeah, like they don't really get along. It's a very dysfunctional family.
They rub each other the wrong way.
Oh yeah,
regularly.
yeah.
And I also think it's strange that like they can be like deceived, I feel like a little bit.
They're not omniscient.
They're not at all. And I feel like that's just like, what if God was like that? It would be horrible. Or we actually had more than one God. It would be horrible. Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
Because which one do you decide to please?
Yeah.
Because the other one's going to be ticked off and it's going to say, yeah, it's going to happen. And so we're going to talk about that through this year. What if that were our world? What if there were no Christianity and that were our world? Because that must have colored the way you live. So it seems to me like you have two choices. One is, I really totally absolutely believe that mythology book is the truth. It's like my Bible, and not me, but I'm a Greek person, okay? And so I am living in constant fear and dread. Not to mention that if Zeus takes a fancy to my wife or my daughter, forget it. You know what I mean? My grandkid's going to be half divine because he just can't control himself at all, right? And so it's going to be a fearful existence. On the other hand, I'm going to maybe say, yeah, I'm not sure the gods would really behave that way. These must be allegorical stories or something. And so I will just go to the temples and do the sacrifices because it's expected of me as a citizen, but it doesn't do anything for me inside. It doesn't bring me healing. Heck, the first option doesn't bring me any healing either, right? Because I'm petrified all the time. And people ask back and forth, how much did the Greeks really believe in these gods? How much was it just stories that they told, but we don't know. But it depends on who you ask. Also, over time, I think there was change. When we get to Plato next spring, you're going to find out he has a lot, through Socrates speaking through Plato, has a lot to say about are beings that behave that way really gods? Isn't that kind of insulting to the gods to act like they behave that way? So, what were you going to say, Marta?
I was just observing that, like, in mythology, that, like, a lot of the authors who wrote these stories, a lot of them, they themselves don't believe that, like, they don't believe that this actually happened, or maybe, like, they don't actually believe in these gods, they just tell the story because it's interesting, or, like, even, like, have you read Do We Have Faces?
Yes.
The fox,
Yes.
fox, like, he was like, these are actually just stories, like, we don't believe in these, like, the gods won't act like this, like, I noticed that a lot. I was like, okay.
Yeah, the fox is a really good example of option number 2. And you read Till We Have Faces with me, right? Oh, you did, yes. So, so I don't know, but they're certainly not divine in the sense that we think of God. Like I said, not omniscient, not beyond petty anger. All right, we talk about the wrath of God, but this is just petty squabbles and anger. Very disturbing. And so we'll throughout this year, we'll explore that and we'll think, what would it be like to live under these gods? Hang on, let me find, I have notes to myself, and I really better follow my notes to myself today because my brain is more than usual disturbed. So going along with our influence of Greece, I didn't do this last year. No, I didn't do this last year. I have an art of the week. You know, I tried to do this for a while with you guys. I have art of the week. So I have prepared some sort of art exhibit for every class. I know. One is a statue. I have to bring it. I know, you have to wait till the end. So you can't bail out early on, but you have to stay for the whole year. So the first thing, and I just apologize in advance for any nudity that might be involved in this class. It will only be involved in pictures. There will be no actual live nudity. But some people's families feel, you know, but I don't, there's certain artwork I can't show you without, I apologize, but. So the first artwork is not Greek. It is much later. It is this picture. Have you seen this picture before?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna, this is the art of the week. Oh, I guess they can pause it. I'm showing it to the camera. Like not invisible people. I am a little crazy, but I'm not that crazy. What Marta's thinking in here. Students who can't see. Okay, so this is the birth of Venus, who is Aphrodite, by Botticelli. Painting in, I don't know, like 1400-ish. Okay, so 1400 plus, so 2400 years, 2000 plus years after the origination of these stories. And if you know anything about the Renaissance, you know that a lot of Greek mythological themes end up in Renaissance paintings, don't they? You might have noticed also that there are, well, Edith Hamilton doesn't do this so much, there are multiple stories that conflict with each other. So in some stories, Aphrodite rises from the sea, which is why she's standing in a seashell, coming out of the ocean. It's kind of random, but there are other stories describing her origin in different ways. Because the book you read is not, oh, this is based on the book written by so-and-so, a Greek mythology professor. No, these were collected over time, and sometimes the stories disagree with each other. Sometimes details got added over time. But this is our art of the week, Botticelli's Birth of Venus, simply to point out that the things we're going to talk about this year have affected art and literature and culture. In fact, I told my husband I was going to tell you this story. I can't believe I'm going to remember to do it. So my husband likes country music, and I'm not so much. But I listen because he's my husband, you know what I mean? And because he does put Billy Joel songs on there too, so I can enjoy them. And so it was Carrie Underwood, and it was called Cupid's Got a Shotgun. Okay, and it wasn't too bad. Carrie Underwood's okay. But I was listening to this, you know, because she's so in love, you know, like the little arrows didn't scratch her, but he's basically, you know, I don't know, you don't want to think about it too hard. He's blasted a hole in her. I don't even want to go there. But anyway, Cupid's got a shotgun. And so we were driving wherever we were driving and listening to a song, and I said, oh, I should mention to my students that even now people are producing works of art, if that's a work of art, it depends on who you ask, based on Greek mythology, all right? Based on the fact that you know who Cupid is, right? Because you don't make a song called Cupid's Got a Shotgun, and then if you're going to describe who Cupid is, like, you should just not even bother with the song. You need a point of reference already, and we have it, but we're losing it as a society because people don't read the same things anymore. I'm thinking of a line in Hamlet, that Hamlet, his dad is dead, his uncle killed him, and his wife, his mother remarried really fast the uncle, the murderer. So Hamlet's got issues on many, we talk about dysfunctional families, okay? So this is a problem. And he's remembering how his mom seemed so upset when his dad died, but then she turns around and marries his brother. And and there's just a line in the Shakespeare play, how she followed my father's body like Niobe, all tears. That's it. Everybody in Shakespeare's audience knew who Niobe was. She, and I don't know if this is in the mythology book or not, she's the lady who said, I'm so wonderful because I've got all these children, and Leto, Leto is a loser because she only has Apollo and Artemis. What a loser. And if you learn nothing from these stories, don't mock the gods, right? And so Apollo kills her sons and Artemis kills her daughters, and she cries. Yeah, and she cries and cries until she just keeps running tears, and she turns into a rock, and it's like with a fountain, with water falling down, and people would point to a rock. It's like it's Niobe because there's a fountain underneath, and it's still flowing tears. It's it, like Niobe, all tears, and you just assume that people know what you're talking about. Carrie Underwood assumes we know who Cupid is. Fortunately for us, Valentines have kept the whole Cupid thing. Even people who don't know any mythology know, Eros, yeah. Cupid. So we can't talk to each other across time without knowing these things. Like we can't read things from long ago unless we know. But can you think about the fact that we can't talk to each other? For example, I'm trying to think of something, computer terminology that we use as an analogy, like what would we say about ourselves that would compare us to a computer? Like, we wouldn't say my systems are down, that's stupid, no one would say that. Like, I need to reboot. We talk about rebooting. Right, but did that mean anything before it was actually turning your computer off and turning it back on? Mm-hmm. But we use it for other things. Anyway, what I'm desperately trying to find here is some term that we're all familiar with so we can use it to communicate with each other and it means something to us. So for most of us, computer terminology, if we use it in a non-computer way, well, we know what it means. That like the Lady Gaga telephone, like, because we all know what telephones are. That's a really bad example. Anyway, I think you know what I'm driving at, that we have certain things that we all know as a society, so we can use them as examples. But people had that, and it was this. It was the books we're going to read. That was their common denominator. That was how we could communicate with each other. So, I don't know, maybe it doesn't help you communicate with other people now, because most people, unfortunately, aren't learning it. But it does help you if you read anybody from the past, which I hope you will do, Raymond. Is Raymond the only senior in here? All of you have the potential of being made to take my class again.
Yeah,
awesome.
I might, yeah.
Okay. Yes. It's fine. It's fine. So our first book that we're going to read is the Iliad. Who has read the Iliad before? Awesome. But here's how Marta did. maybe that's a little exaggeration, but it kind of communicates to me, oh my gosh, yes, and it was just a terrible memory. Is this true?
No, I mean, I would like to read, like, I don't know, something else that's, like, something that's, I haven't read before.
Well,
I've
I'm
read
sorry.
No,
Well,
my
it's your fault for
It's
reading
my
too much,
fault, 'cause
Marta.
I read books, it's my
No,
fault.
it's never a problem to read books. Often, the second or third reading of something. Didn't you mock me once for reading things too many times? Okay, yeah, I thought it was you. But you understand it better the next time. Do you know what I mean? Because you know what, you're not looking for the plot. You're going to find out what happens.
Last year, Tale of Two Cities and Emma, even though I read this like countless times, like wow, like I've never actually like looked at this book.
Okay, applause for that. The Iliad is pretty much the first piece of literature that we have. I'm not counting the East, okay? I'm not counting Asia. I really don't know anything about Asia. Asia has a thriving ancient culture about which I know nothing, and so I'm not meaning, I recognize that it's there, but in America, we're not the heirs of that culture, we're the heirs of this culture, okay? So if we go back to the very beginning of literature, we find two authors. The second one I'll tell you about in a minute. The first one is Homer. We don't know who the heck Homer is. We don't even know if there was a Homer. Some people, it's even been speculated that Homer was a woman. We don't know if there were a series of poets that put this together over time, the thing that we call the Iliad and the Odyssey. And we collectively call them that. We don't know. The tradition is that he was blind, and he was a
See, about some of these things,
Okay.
this person was blind, like Beethoven, he was deaf, or Stevie Wonder, he was blind. I was like, no, they weren't blind. They were deaf. They just did it.
So we're going to talk a little more. Hold on to that skepticism, and in this case, it's a healthy skepticism. Okay, it's a good question that he's asking. Like, how do we know? We're taking it from tradition, but there's something in the Odyssey. There's like hints in the Odyssey that people have taken to be that. Okay, just okay. You know what? Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what the tradition is. I'm not responsible for the tradition. And he was a bard. So when we have no TV and phones and computer or any other forms of entertainment, including books, it was very popular to have traveling people who come and sing or perform stories for you. Okay, so some of you remember Beowulf. We read Beowulf. We talked about. Did I make you watch part of that? Did you do that at the Schoonmakers?
No, I watched it.
Oh, we did do it there?
We did
Benjamin
Benjamin Bagby.
Oh yeah.
He sounds like he belongs in the Hobbit.
Yes.
Okay. So this is an old tradition of entertainment. You come around and you perform. Now, if you have a copy of the Iliad, or if you have previously read the Iliad, you will notice that the Iliad is really long. It was the custom for hundreds of years into the classical period and even into Roman times. Students memorized the Iliad. I am not kidding. It's like something you did. It's like if I said, oh, school children for ages have memorized the Old Testament. Like, what? Or even the New Testament. You'd still go, what?
That's like advanced homeschooler. That's like
Yeah, it's like
ultimate.
the crazy ultimate homeschooler. But that was education then. Part of it was memorizing Homer. And so they did so. The Iliad is a poem. But keep in mind, we are going to read a translation. We're not reading it in Greek. So just take a big sigh of relief. We're reading in Greek. Although, I'm going to do it, and this is for posterity. Oh, I'm so nervous. All I have here. So Raymond's I can see Raymond's face already. Raymond's going to go, oh my gosh, Mrs. Ferguson needs to just get another life. I wanted to see how much of the Iliad in Greek I could memorize over the summer. It didn't make it very, you kept that in really well. You didn't roll your eyes or anything. I wanted to see how far I could get. And also because it has a certain rhythm to it, and I just thought it would help me in my Greek learning. So, okay. I have it here, and I forget. I did it like 5 times this morning, and then I got hung up on one line. Okay. I have to just look straight ahead and ignore all of you. You know how it is. When you recite, it's like I have to pretend I'm alone, and I have to look at the page so I can't be all bardish, you know, and act like I'm, okay. Meni naerethea, Peleadio Achilles ulomeni, Himuri Achaios alge ethike, Polos dipthimus psuka saidi proiapsin heroon, autus de heloria. Oh no. Oh, autus de heloria toike kunesin oionoisi tedaita, de teleto bule exude ta prota, diastetein erisante atriedes, ta anax andron kaidios Achilles. That's how far I got. So I printed it out. This is how far I got.
I didn't realize how weird the Greek sounds.
I know.
It kind of sounds, it sounds like we're changing something.
Yeah.
So the rhythm of the poem, and this is going to bring back maybe happy memories, maybe nightmares. I don't know of last year. It's dactylic hexameter. Dactyls are da da da, da da da. Strawberry, strawberry. So a hard boom and then 2 short. Strawberry. Telephone. Doesn't come as easy in English as iambics.
Totally.
Making things up and making them fit. Okay. The Iliad is written in dactylic hexameter, but the last foot, so remember a foot is a da-da-da. I didn't bring the board out here, but so da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. That would be 3 of them, right? So this one has 6 feet, but the last one, do you remember the spondies? Everybody's like, no. What's a spondee? Do you remember?
I can't.
Okay, it's when it's every syllable has an emphasis, okay? And you can't do that for very long, unless you're just really very intense. You know, that would be intense, okay? So it goes like this: strawberry, 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 jam pot. That's kind of, and now when I said it, Meni naere thea peleadia Achilles, and that's the end of the line, Achilles. Meni aede thea peleadios Achilles. All right, that's how each line was. 5 strawberries and a jam pot. All right, this is important because your assignment for this week.
Oh no.
Oh no.
And it is your only writing assignment. We're easing into the writing very gradually. What is your assignment? It is 6 lines. Don't make that face, Meredith. You can do this. Of strawberry, 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 jam pot. They do not have to be connected to each other.
So we could just.
Do you understand? You don't have to tell a story. They can just be isolated lines. Does that make sense? Like, you can tell a story if you want to. Good for you. But so brushing. So I made this one up. It's not as easy as I am. Brushing my cat with a brush that I purchased from Petco. See?
6 lines of that.
Yeah, but it didn't take me very long. Watching a bird at the feeder with feathers. No, watching a bird at the feeder with feathers. Abundant squawking. You can do this. You just have to think, but this is all you have to write the whole week. It's okay. You can do this. Look how living rooms covered with carpet and littered with garbage from parties. That's one.
My room every day.
Books on the bookshelf, all stacked in a glorious pile of good knowledge. Okay, I didn't say they had to be good. Just do your best to follow strawberry, 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 strawberry jam pod. Okay.
Oh, it's like 5 strawberries.
The very first, first of all, let me step away. First, not step away literally, only metaphorically. Okay, we're done when? We 11:15, 12:45? Okay. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Greece, and then we're going to come back to the Iliad, okay? I meant to do that before, but we're blaming everything this week on the wedding. And we'll blame everything next week on the fact that I'm tired from the wedding. And then the week after that, I have to find a new excuse. Greece. I was going to say Greece was not a country. Okay, Greece is a country, and it did exist in ancient times as well as today. But the idea that we think of as a unified nation called Greece wasn't a thing in the ancient world, okay, in Greek times. The Greeks referred to themselves as Hellenes. Some of you will remember this from a couple of years ago. This will be a review. But largely they thought of themselves as residents of their city. Okay? I am Athenian. I am Corinthian. I am Theban. I am Spartan. Not so much I am Greek.
So my sister Mary, she has like a. So have you heard of Percy Jackson?
Yes.
So she has the mythology, the Greek mythology, one of the books,
Oh.
and it has pictures and stuff, and I can't bring it, but it's really funny.
Oh, yes, you could bring. I
I'll bring it.
often have students that like, that's not how it wasn't Percy Jackson. I'm like, well, you know, Percy Jackson isn't our authority on all things, although it's not bad. Like, I never read any of them. It was my youngest son. He started reading some of them. It was when he was old enough. It was part of his independent, you know, it was like free time, whatever. Okay, so a Greek city, the Greek word for city is polis. So, you know, we have that word at the end of city, Minneapolis, Annapolis. Can you think of another polis city? No.
No. So it sounds
No. Like cities in America.
Yeah.
In polis. Metropolis. And metropolis literally means big city. But polis didn't mean city the way we think of city, like Chicago or New York or Los Angeles. It was also a self-contained country. So it's like if Chicago were a big city, but it were also its own nation with its own customs and like gods that watched over it, they're bad gods that watch over Chicago. Shouldn't say that. Try not to be political in this class.
That would be very, very disturbing for everyone.
And so everybody, as you travel America, you don't say I'm American. You say I'm a Chicagoan. I'm a Chicagoite. Whatever and this is what we do. These are our customs there. And then we go to war with other cities. So we go to war against Peoria, you know, because they're their own polis. And so this is Greek history. A lot of each individual polis going to war with other polis, which is the plural, polises, over sometimes big things and sometimes trivial things. But don't think, so we're going to study Greece, but what we're really going to look at is what's happening in Sparta and what's happening in Athens, what's happening in Thebes, and what's happening in Corinth. Not in detail all of those. Mostly the two big ones, Athens and Sparta. And if you have Oh, actually, we don't need to write this down, I don't think. Hang on. No, actually, you don't need to write this down, but I'm going to tell you, okay? Because we're going to go over it later. Greek history is divided into several main sections, and you guys will remember this from the junior high. If I had the whiteboard, I'd write this down, but again, we're going to go back over all of these, so this is just for your information. From 2000 to about the year 1400, there were people living on the island of Crete. Crete, I did not bring my map of Greece. You know, Greece sticks down, and it's got all these little finger things, and there's an island down below, okay? I'll bring maps later.
So it's kind of like an animal.
No, it's just kind of long and skinny. Like a worm, well, and a snake, a worm maybe, but it looked like an animal. It's long and skinny. And the people who lived on Crete for hundreds of years seemed to be the main influence. So they call it the Minoan Civilization for reasons that we'll talk about when we talk about that more in depth. Yes, yes. And then they inexplicably sort of disappeared. Well, again, we'll talk about this in a later class, about 1400 BC, 1450 BC. And then there was a group of people on the mainland. They took over, and they seemed to be centered at a city called Mycenae. They're the Mycenaeans. All right? There were other cities, but Mycenae was the big wig. And the art changed, you know, and the methods of burial changed. All those things that tell you someone else is in charge now. Okay. This went on from 1450 for several hundred years. Around 1100 to 1000 BC, those cities all got set on fire and sacked and burned, and we don't know why. Usually people have told it they got invaded by somebody. We will talk more about this, all this stuff later, okay, in depth.
That would make sense, though.
Yeah, because like there's absolutely like why would you go?
Why would you
Yes.
burn your own?
No, you wouldn't do it to your own city.
You're right.
So, well, okay. I stand corrected. Maybe you would do it to your own city. And then, until around the year 800 BC, we have no writing. Writing disappeared. The people, the Mycenaeans and the Minoans, they were writing something. But one of them, we can't really read it off. I actually wore my special earrings. These I got on my trip to Greece. This is a disc. I mean, this isn't. This is an earring. The disc is much bigger. With Minoan writing, it's called linear A, that we just can't read. Okay? It's called the Phaistos disc because Phaistos is the name of the town they founded it. We can't read that. The Mycenaeans were writing. I think there's been inroads on translating that, but all of that disappeared. Around the year 800 BC, they started writing again. And when they did, they started writing what we can recognize as Greek. That period of time we call the Greek Dark Ages. They are dark because they're dark to us. We can't read, and we don't know what the heck was going on. We can dig stuff up and make speculations, but we have nothing written down. Think about how bad, I think we talked about this in other classes, think about how bad it has to be to forget how to write. You are so worried about existence, just feeding yourself and your family and getting through the day and not getting killed by somebody, that you don't have time to write anything down or teach your children to write. It's kind of an ugly picture. But around 800 BC, they start writing again.
There's a happier speculation. We just lost everything. They could be right.
Oops.
We
lost, yes.
Like it
Or-
This is
or-
true. We can't prove that didn't happen.
Or
They're like a
maybe
degree.
someone stole everything and then
Burned it.
no. Someone like let's say like this king or emperor sacked the city and then they like stole everything and then
He accidentally lost it?
no. Or
Is it buried somewhere underground?
in the sea?
Okay. We could probably endlessly speculate, but as far as we know, they didn't write. And when we came back to 800 BC, they are writing. And from 800 to 500 BC or so, they call it the Archaic period. And then after that is going to be where we're going to spend the bulk of this school year. We're going to spend most of this school year in the years between 500 BC and 400 BC. But to go back to the reason I gave you this overview, so back to the Iliad. You guys read or listened to in Edith Hamilton, and some of you have read other retellings of the Trojan War. So once upon a time, there was a wedding, right? The goddess Thetis was marrying the guy Peleus, because they did that sort of thing back then, and because she was sort of forced into it anyway. And they invited everyone to the wedding except the loser goddess, Eris, goddess of discord, who shows up and flings out that golden apple, right, to the fairest. And they immediately start fighting over it. They fight over it for 20 years. Long enough for Achilles, who's the child of this marriage, to grow up. Long enough for Paris, Prince of Troy, who's growing up there, to grow up. And finally award the apple to Aphrodite, who promises him in turn the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, who happens to be married to King Menelaus of Sparta. So depending on who you believe, he steals her, and she's not willing. He steals her, and she is willing. Don't know, she goes, whatever. She runs off there. And we'll talk about some theories about this later. Just so happens that Menelaus' brother is Agamemnon. He's the high king over the different polis, the different cities, okay? And once upon a time, everybody had wanted to marry Helen, because why not? She's gorgeous. And so her dad said, look, I'm going to give her to one of you, but you can't fight after I give her to one of you. Anybody who messes with Helen and the guy she marries, the rest of you have to swear an oath to go after him. Because he didn't want, civil unrest. Their dad's name is Tindarius, in case you care. And so this is called the Oath of Tindarius. And so they all swear. Well, somebody messed with Helen. Obviously, it wasn't a fellow Greek, but it was somebody else. So they'd all sworn an oath, yes, we will go defend Helen. So we get together an expedition. The expedition lasts for 10 years. Seriously.
They were sitting outside of Troy.
Yes, 10 years. 10 years. They're sitting outside of Troy. The Iliad, and by the way, Ilium is the Greek term for the city of Troy.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So why did they just surround the city and wait till Troy had no, supplies?
I don't know.
How did they just let them get out?
There were reinforcements coming in all the time.
I don't understand. They just sat outside the gate just watching them go out and getting food and going back in.
No, but people got, I don't know. There were multiple gates, but you would think they could have just camped around.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't pretend that there was good strategy in point. That's not the point of the war or the poem. But this is a very good point. Yes.
You can blame on the fact that Agamemnon was probably having doubts about sacrificing his dog.
Okay, yes. Yes. We'll talk about that more later. We'll talk about more of the details. But I think most of them were in the mythology book. The Iliad, the story of Ilium, is not really the story of Ilium. It is the story of a few weeks within 10 years. It all happens in just a few weeks. We don't see the beginning of the war. It's just understood. By the time this poem was composed, whoever Homer was, this was common knowledge. Everybody knew. Paris, we all knew the story. This is just about one thing. Meni nairethea Peleadio Achilles. Menin means anger, wrath, rage. That's the first word of the poem. Rage. Oh goddess, sing to me of the rage of Achilles. Okay, it's about anger. I want you to take note when you start reading. How many people are angry? Oh, Achilles is very angry.
I'm angry.
Everybody's angry. No, you don't count. You being angry because you have to read it, that's not.
No, not because I have to read it.
No.
People are done.
Okay. So, the question, did this really happen? Was there a Trojan War? This is a question that people have asked. I think I'm giving spoilers for later classes, but what the heck. People really, for many, many centuries, thought it was all just a fairy tale, okay? For many years, they didn't know, like, where was this Troy place? Where was this Iliad? We don't know. And some of you, I've told this story before in other classes. There was a German guy in the 19th century, and his name was Heinrich Schliemann. And Mr. Schliemann really, really loved Homer. Really, really, really loved Homer. And he spent the early part of his life making huge gobs of money in business so that he could spend the second half of his time retired and going and digging things up. And one of his goals was to dig up Troy. You're going to hear this story again because I've got artwork related to it. But he used Homer as a guide, and he found a place with, okay, they talk about a harbor here, and they talk about mountain ranges and a river and everything. And he started digging, and he found a city. He found a city, and it has been identified as Troy. It is the ancient city of Troy, and it was destroyed multiple times. You know how archaeologists find levels, okay?
Yeah,
and by pottery and things, they kind of date what level. So there was a city there at the time, in Mycenaean times. So remember, Agamemnon, I didn't tell you this, Agamemnon is king in Mycenae. Sometimes they say Argos, but mostly it's Mycenae. These are that Mycenaean culture I was talking about, okay? And this poem tells us the story of a great, massive conglomeration of forces going over to that city and messing it up, only not very efficiently, but eventually. And there is a burned, destroyed layer around 1200, 1250 BC that we think is that Troy. Now, it doesn't quite match up. There's a layer above it that was more prosperous, or a layer below it, before it. You know what I mean? That was more prosperous. It wasn't the most prosperous level. Like the goods, the gold and the stuff that they find there isn't as good as some of the other layers.
So these people, I mean, they were saying salt was expensive, the Greeks,
I don't know, but you mean in the Iliad?
Yeah.
Well, but that's wartime.
Yeah.
So that might not be a good indication of what they were.
I guess maybe there's some things that they thought were valuable that maybe we were kind of like, meh. Like, I don't know.
Well, maybe. I see. I'm sorry. I didn't understand you before, but I understand what you're saying now. So, but no, generally gold, silver, precious jewel, I mean, those things across time, people value. But so as far as we know, if there was an expedition to Troy, it happened about 1200, 1250 BC. Homer, as far as we know, the earliest references we have to it, we're talking about 800 BC. So it's as if I wrote an epic poem about the landing of the Pilgrims. Something that happened about 400 years ago. So when I wrote it, if my historical sense wasn't very good, I might get some things really right. Like I might mention the Mayflower and Plymouth Rock and Squanto and all this, but I also might accidentally mix in like a Republican form of government, and I might mix things from a later time because I didn't really understand. We think that's what Homer does. He talks about things that give us a glimpse of what was it like in Mycenaean times, but also mixes in things that happened later. And so there are people, believe it or not, who devote their lives to trying to separate these things out. I'm not planning to be one of those people.
I admire those people, but
You're like an environment.
So, this was also in your mythology book too, but I want to mention the problem of the house of Atreus. This is Agamemnon and Menelaus. We're going to spend a big chunk of time this year.
All kill each other, pretty much.
Yeah, all of them kill each other. In case you don't remember, I just wrote down a synopsis. Okay. Agamemnon and Menelaus, the two big kings. Okay, Menelaus, whose wife got stolen, Agamemnon, brother-in-law of said wife, High King. Their great-grandfather, Tantalus, he's the guy who tried to serve his son as a meal to the gods. Okay, why you do? Don't know. Better not to ask. His son Pelops. Okay, but the gods being gods, apparently they could figure this out. I think this is kid stew. I don't think we want to eat this. So they punish Tantalus. He's the guy who's in Tartarus, in the bad place in Hades, where he's hungry and there's a branch with fruit, but every time he reaches, the wind takes it away. And he's thirsty and there's water running, but every time he tries to drink it, it recedes into the ground. He's being tantalized.
Ooh, so that's
eternally.
That's where we get the
He's being tantalized. I'm teasing you. You can't really have it. I'm just tantalizing you. Okay. That's their great-grandpa. Their grandpa Pelops, fortunately, the gods put him back together again. However, one of them accidentally ate part of his shoulder. So I think he got like a bionic one. I think he got a fake one. Okay. Pelops married a lady named Hippodamia. He had to outrace her father. Her father was on a chariot, which just is not right. And he had to outrace whoever wanted to marry the daughter. He's going to go on this race, but he bribes the charioteer to sabotage the chariot.
Oh, wow.
The big chariot wreck. It's a huge wreck.
So, like,
The traffic's backed up for miles. No, and it kills the father.
Oh, that's not gonna go very well.
And as he dies, or maybe it's the co-conspirator was killed, the guy who sabotaged the chariot, and he cursed Pelops' family. So they got 2 strikes against him, okay? Pelops has 2 sons. And now this gets into the part that's going to sound familiar. Atreus and Thyestes. Thyestes stole Atreus' wife. So Atreus killed Thyestes' kids and fed them to him. What is up with this family? That's Agamemnon and Menelaus' dad.
Oh.
So we'll come back to that story later.
3 strikes against him.
So I just keep this in mind. The reason I tell you all this, it's like, oh, it's too much information. The people listening to this poem knew all of this. That was, Agamemnon and Menelaus, they eat their kids in that family. Bad news. Okay. And then in stuff we're going to read later, the place we're going to read, it was just taken for granted that everyone knew this. Okay. That everyone knows there's something about Agamemnon and Menelaus' family. Okay.
Just like ate food that was fed to him when he like took someone else's wife.
Yeah. I'll come to dinner.
Put you a meal and you eat
Sure.
it.
Hey, bring it on.
Or feeding you
Yeah, I
another
totally
kid.
just said that. So I hate my sister a lot. I'm just gonna marry her, and then my brother, who's I'm assuming not happy with me, hands me a meal, and I'm just gonna eat it, no questions asked.
Okay.
I'm sure that's the
I have, before I pass out my stuff, I made books for all of you. Oh, wait a minute, we have half an hour left. I can talk for a long time. We might get done a little early.
At the end of class I do have brownies. I made brownies. They're a bit rich, but I made brownies, so
Why do people say you're really rich? Like, that's a problem. For the people, oh, this is so rich. I don't know if I could eat anymore. I'm like, I don't even understand what that means. Are you speaking English? What?
Do you stop at the common?
Oh, gold star to Adriana. Okay, hang on. Say that again in a minute, because I'm not ready to talk about that yet, but you're on it. Okay, I just wanted to read this quote from C.S. Lewis, and it's about reading old books, just to encourage you as we launch into this year. We may be sure that the characteristic blindness of the 20th century, the blindness about which posterity will ask, but how could they have thought that, lies where we have never suspected it. None of us can fully escape this blindness, but we shall certainly increase it and weaken our guard against it if we read only modern books. Where they are true, they will give us truths which we half all knew already. Where they are false, They will aggravate the error with which we are already dangerously ill. The only palliative, the only remedy, is to keep a clean sea breeze of the centuries blowing through our minds, and this can be done only by reading old books. Our culture believes some stuff that's not true. And I'm not talking about this glaring stuff like abortion, and I'm talking about all of us in this room have some sort of bias that's kind of off-center because we live in the 21st century and we are who we are, and we don't know what it is. But we get hints to it when we read something very old, and we remember reading Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People, or Geoffrey of Monmouth. It's just very other, you know? You're like, but why? For example, we're all Christians in this room, and we all believe in miracles. We all believe in a God that can do supernatural things. But we're also grew up in a culture where science explains things for us, okay? It's just part of what we breathe and who we are. So when we read about, sometimes, maybe not us in this room so much, coming from a Protestant background, I can speak more to that. That you read about some of these miracles, some of these things, medieval miracles, and you're like, what the heck? And we say, maybe not us in this room, but people, how can they be so gullible? And we don't stop to say, what is it about us that doesn't expect God to act? What is it about us that just looks for a natural explanation for things? Again, maybe not us. Maybe not raised in a I'm going to say devoutly Christian home, okay, where it's not just going through the motions, but it means something to you, okay, and it's real. But most people in our society don't ask themselves that question. Why do I look for a natural explanation? Because it's the way you were raised. We were raised past the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment and everything. But when we read books where people are not operating from that mindset, it is jarring. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think of looking at it that way. Or it is for most of our society. And I think that's what C.S. Lewis is saying. This will seem very other to us. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have truth. And I just, one thing I wanted to ask you guys your opinion on. Newsflash, all opinions aren't equal, despite the fact of what people think. You know, some of us have more enlightened opinions than others. But I think we're all maybe equally enlightened on this question. Can pagans tell us truth? Can we learn anything? These Greeks, these guys we're going to study, they're not Christians. Are we going to learn anything true this year?
Yes.
There's basic human truths that you just know from like just being human and having them in life and stuff.
Can you give me any examples of something that you would call a basic human truth that's...
I mean, there's like let's say murder. Like even if it were a commandment, you just know, like inherently, you just know it's wrong.
Interestingly, every culture in the world has laws against murder. It's just their definition of murder changes, right? Who is allowed? Who falls into the category of this is a group of people you can kill with impunity, but not these people. But every culture has a group of not these people.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Meredith?
And I guess, like with Zeus and all his women, everybody kind of knew that wasn't right. That there was always spoken about like yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Just stick with the one. But now,
which is why Plato was Socrates through Plato was saying, yeah, that's disrespectful to the gods to say they behave that way. Every group of people have rules about, you know, to be blunt, who you're allowed to sleep with and who you're not. All right? The categories, you know, in many cultures, it is one man, one woman, husband, wife for life, okay? But there's always, yeah, that we don't do that. That group of people is off limits to you. All right? Some groups have multiple wives and things like that, but that group is off limits. Everyone knows. So there are truths about behavior, we'll say, that are always, I mean, of course they're always true. God doesn't give us truth that's only true for Christians. They're true in all time and all places because he's the God of everything. But yeah, Helena.
Yeah, there's also like the other side though, like heroes are always like sought after because of their virtue, you know. So it's not only like you have a desire to be like not bad, but also like a desire to be good. And everyone wants to be a hero and be virtuous, you know, and do good deeds. So I guess that was
But our definition of heroic changes, right? So we're going to look at these two famous poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Each one of them has a hero, a main character. We have Achilles and we have Odysseus. They are both heroic in their own ways, but in very different ways. So anyway, that's my apology, not my defense. Not my, I'm sorry, you have to read these books. I'm not going to apologize for these books, but that's my defense of reading them. So, Adriana, the moment has come. So, when you read, the translation that I have chosen for you, Robert Fagel's, is very, very readable. It's still written as a poem, because you can get versions that are just written like a story. It's not, they didn't even try to be poetic. But it is written like a poem. Do you have your copy, Adriana? Is it in there? Can you pass it over to me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It probably looks like this. It doesn't, it's fine. As long as it says it's translated by Robert Fagels, this is all I care about. It just, but so I went over and gave Ruth the pep talk. It was abbreviated. She didn't get the whole pep talk, and Adriana was there. And I wanted to make a point about reading this. First of all, I shouldn't say things and then say, I know none of you are going to do this. Reading out loud is awesome. And you're like, yeah, not so much. Okay. But reading out loud is, although I will tell you the truth, I can read out loud and not pay any attention to what I'm reading. I don't know when I developed this skill, but I can. No, skill was the wrong word, wasn't it?
I think so.
Character flaw. It's not a character flaw either. But I can read, and I don't know what the heck. And so, because I think it's because I read out loud for so many years to my kids, and until they were in college, we had family read aloud. And but I used to fall asleep. I've told you this story. I used to sleep and read at the same time, and then not know what I read. But sometimes I read and I'm just like, yeah, I did all the words. So when I read at church, sometimes I'm the reader, and I'll get up and I have no idea what my reading was. I don't know what's wrong with me. Anyway, so if you're one of those people, don't read it out loud.
I do have a question now.
Yes.
So this might sound like a little bit weird, but like my mom listens to a lot of stuff by an exorcist, Father Ricker, and so there's some stuff like with the book that we've been reading mythology. It seems like a lot of the gods, they act more like demons than like gods,
Yes.
you know? And so there are things like that are questionable, like if some of the gods in the book or some of the people are actually demons, and in real life they are. And I know that saying like a demon's name out loud can give it like power and more strength
yes.
over humanity. So
Yes.
in mythology, I try not to read out loud, but I don't
Okay, that's a really good point, and that brings me to something we haven't really talked about is who the heck are these gods? We'll probably come back to this throughout the year, and so the church fathers were kind of divided, and all the way back to the Apostle Paul. At one point, he says that food sacrificed to the idols was sacrificed to demons, but then he says later, but don't you know that idols are nothing? So this has been sort of the church father debate, not really debate, but okay, some of them really honestly believe these were demonic entities. Okay. In which case, I don't know. Of course, we're reading translations of their names, so I don't know if it works in translation.
There are some who like later demons have actually. I think there are some that demons have actually fessed up to being like.
Oh, okay.
That one.
Some people speculated that they were the memory of really, really important, exceptionally strong people. I go for that for Hercules anyway. He's very Samson-ish, if you've noticed, in his life, and we know in the Bible that early on there were some people of exceptional stature and strength, and so they said, well, I think it's just, you're actually worshiping old kings or old human beings. And then a third group, and I'm trying to think if I've ever read anybody who actually stuck up for this, is that they just aren't anything but imaginary. I don't think anyone ever claimed they were nothing but imaginary. But there has been a conflict. It's like, well, they're nothing because they're just ancient human beings, or they're demonic entities. I don't know.
There could be
I honestly just don't
Yeah,
know.
some could be both. Like I would say about like the more honorable gods, I would say are probably like old kings who were very virtuous in their lifetime, or like that people like they definitely viewed as godlike, probably, you know.
There are demons who can have the appearance of good though,
Yeah.
even though they're
Yeah.
not good. Like there was the one girl, I
Yeah.
can't remember her name, but she was possessed with demons and they told her she would have fame if she did all these things. So she did a lot of pious things, but underneath she was like possessed and the demons were telling her what to do just to kind of infiltrate the church and stuff. So
I certainly don't advise you to take up the worship of any of the Greek gods in any way, shape, or form. I feel like that's safe ground right there. But yeah, we don't know what was going on there. Like some people said, oh, the whole Zeus overthrowing Cronus, and it was one king coming in and overthrowing a previous king. Like it was a historical memory of something that actually happened. I don't know. Anyway, so when you read, which you're probably not going to read out loud, but it's fine. But even when you're mentally, I mean, for me, most of us are mentally saying the words in our heads. Some of us, and I would recommend doing that, even if you're such a fast, good reader that you can just skim, because it's poetry. You can't really get the nuances. It's not like I'm scanning a newspaper article to find out who won the game. You know what I mean? So I was mentioning to Adriana and Ruth that it's wise to follow the punctuation, because, you know, if you stop at the end of every line, often it goes on to the next line and you're going to lose the sense of what happened. So, for example, it says, what god drove them to fight with such a fury? And that question mark. Apollo, the son of Zeus and Leto. End mark. So don't read Apollo, the son of Zeus and Leto, incensed at the king. If that doesn't all go together. There's an end mark. Incensed at the king, he swept a fatal plague through the army. So if there's an end mark, if there's a comma in the middle of a line, that's a pause. Stop and don't stop for no, and contemplate. But take a breath and remember that's where the thought ends. I'm trying to find another that if it would mess me up if I didn't do that. Yeah, I'm not going to find one, so never mind. So I hope you know what I mean. So we do this, all poetry is like this. So last year, you guys were reading poetry every week, and you have to, I don't know if you noticed when I was reading it out loud, I don't know if I talked about that. You know, if I'd stopped at the end of every line, it's just if it rhymes, you want to stop at the end of every line or something, but that's not the thought. That's not where this thought stops, and you can't do that. So keep that in mind. But this is a very, very readable translation, okay? I chose it. There's one, the guy's named Richmond Lattimore, and it's beautiful, but it's all flowery, floaty, just like archaic sounding language, and no, we're not doing that. So we're doing a pretty straightforward one. You really don't need to know anything starting out except for what you know, the background of the war, but there are a few things that are helpful to know, and that brings me to our lovely thing that each of you get. At great personal effort to myself, I have made, and my husband, who had to format it all for me, I have made a guide to our entire year.
You should sell those. You'd make
Awesome.
money. No.
I probably should.
Your 27
And so it's got a table of contents, and in the back are the writing, arrangement, and outlines and everything. And that. So I've got it divided up by weeks. So obviously this is week 1. And so if you would, here, Martin, this one for you. And if you would take the others and take one and pass down.
You might have a signed copy, please.
Signed by the author. Oh, by the way, while I'm thinking about this, I have Alondra. This belongs to Alondra. And then here, Meredith and Neil. I have your second semester names. So what I have done, if you open up to week 1, by the way, all of your reading questions, I'm going to have you, so you're not going to do the thing that we experimented with that I'm not sure anybody was really doing, which was summarizing the chapters and stuff. Yeah, forget that. You're going to answer questions in the book. I made questions for you. And I want you to bring these with you.
At least I don't have to.
Because I want you to bring the questions. And we're going to go over the questions each week, just like the reading questions from last year, only I'm not collecting them. You guys, if you don't know the answer, or you write something that's just totally wrong, you're going to correct it yourself. Because I got too many papers to read. I have 28 high school students this year.
Wow.
I know, I have a ton of them on Wednesday. So that's a lot of papers. Okay, so look on page 1 where it says week 1, and let's look at the notes on reading the Iliad. Okay. First thing that is helpful to know. People have more than one name. The Greeks, because you know Greeks and Trojans, right? These are the two sides in the war. It's helpful to know which side is which, right? The Greeks are known as Achaeans, Argives, Danaans. All those words mean the Greek guys. You encounter one of those words, it means the Greek guys. Pallas is Athena.
So where did it say Pallas Athena sometimes?
I thought Pallas.
Like there's the story from where Pallas was a friend.
No, that's no. This is Pallas. So whenever it's capitalized, like whenever you see it, it's obviously it's a goddess. But that's the goddess they mean. Sometimes it will say Pallas Athena. Sometimes it will just say Pallas.
But it's a second name. Like Katerina Ivanovna has a second name.
Oh yeah.
What?
Katerina Ivanovna, Crime and Punishment.
Oh yes, no. Oh my gosh, that's right. They think people have early names. Okay. So, whenever it says the sons of Atreus, that means Agamemnon and Menelaus. Remember? Their dad fed their uncle, their cousins. And sometimes they're referred to as the Atrides. Anytime you see ides on the end of a name, it means son of. The Atrides are the sons of Atreus. So, Pelides, Achilles is the son of Peleus. Pelides. Raymond's like, oh, are you kidding me? It's not, there's only a few of them. And pretty much by context, you know what's going on. Tydides is Diomedes, because his dad's name is Tydeus. All right? So, also, in the back, okay, first of all, there are notes in the back. You do not read the notes. Don't have to look up all the notes. Don't do that. There's a huge introduction. Don't read the introduction, not unless you're just burning for desire to know, okay? But in the back, there's a glossary in alphabetical order of people's names and places. He's like, I can't remember who that is. He seems important. You can look him up. However, let me finish this last line and then I want to make another comment on that. Note that there are 2 Greek warriors named Ajax.
Really?
Yeah. One is the son of Telamon. Sometimes he's called Telamonian Ajax. He's huge. You always tell him, he's standing like a bulwark of the Greek, whatever, like they make it sound huge. The other guy, he's known as Little Ajax or Lesser Ajax. How would you like to be lesser?
Oh wait.
Wouldn't that be a bummer? I'm sorry, Ajax, but I'm lesser.
Isn't there a James the Lesser too?
Yes. Oh, it's a bummer to be the lesser. Okay, so, and he's the son of Oileus. It has nothing to do with being oily, all right? But if it helps you remember that he's little and he's kind of wiry and he's all oiled all over and he slips into the enemy lines because he's the son of Oileus, I don't care. All right. Okay, so, take note of this. The important people in the book are going to be clear to you who's important pretty fast. But there are going to be long stretches when so-and-so from this side meets so-and-so from that side, and they get a spear stuck through their throat or whatever. And it's not important. Just say it like that. What's not important is the fact of, you don't have to remember these guys' names. And it's not even important which side which is on. You just know that it's brutal, okay? So there's going to be Achilles, Odysseus, the Ajaxes, Hector, Paris. All right, these are the guys who are important. Agamemnon, Menelaus. You're going to know who's important. Nestor. Nestor is an old man who, he's too old to fight. He goes out anyway, but he talks all the time. He tells really, really long stories. He just goes on, and he won't. Yeah, when I was young, we went out to get in this battle, and I was pretty young, but I was awesome, and I did this. Nestor.
So you just
really
watch
say
the
that.
battle following someone.
Okay, no. Anyway, so don't worry. Here's my thing. Don't look up everybody's name in the glossary. For crying out loud, please. If it's just two guys fighting each other and one of them kills the other and then the action moves on, it's okay. You just know, okay, here's an episode of the brutality of war. Boom, let's move along.
But it could be Hector and Achilles or Achilles.
Okay, well then you know.
But like.
No, it won't take you very long to figure it out. If you're in doubt, look, if you're in doubt, you can look them up in the glossary. But pretty fast, by the time you get to book 3, and by the way, it's divided into books, not chapters. Here is why. I have more to say than I thought. Okay, so once upon a time, we did not have books like we have now, right? We had scrolls, rolls. And there's only so long you want that roll to be, right? Because it's just getting out of control, and it's huge, it's this big around. I can't carry this anymore. So they divided them up. In a couple hundred years BC, in Alexandria, the big library in Alexandria, they had a copy of the Iliad, and they did division work, and they divided it into 24 rolls, 24 books, okay? So they refer to it as book 1, book 2, book 3, but it just means chapter, okay? Okay, so I'm still on the same page. Okay, I told you about the glossary. Epithets. Many characters are referred to, or repeatedly are referred. I have a typo in my. Are repeatedly mentioned by a word or phrase such as rosy-fingered Dawn, swift Achilles, bright-eyed Athena, Hector, breaker of horses, etc. All right, even though we never see Hector break a horse. Ever.
Why would you want to break
Okay.
a horse?
No, it means
like
train them.
Yeah.
Break them. Okay. This is not lack of imagination in the poet. It is a device to fit the words to the meter and an aid to improvisation in performance. So for instance, the phrase breaker of horses has a certain meter in Greek, and I can stick that in because I need the strawberry, 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 strawberry jam pot. Swift Achilles, rosy-fingered Dawn. We stick them in where we need them to. And so maybe I'm really good bard, and maybe I just do a little improvisation on the side, but I can get myself back into the rhythm, and I can create new lines with the right rhythm by using these epithets. Does that make sense? So you're going to see those, and it's not, you're going to think, oh, somebody should have got this guy a thesaurus, because he cannot come up with another description. And no, it's because it fits the meter in Greek. Okay, last thing I want to mention is epic similes. Okay, a simile. What, well, I was going to say, what is a simile? And it just says right there. Comparison using like or as. Her eyes were like pools of water. Okay. In an epic simile, which Homer is known for, he takes the second thing and he expands it. So instead of her eyes were like pools of water, I made this one up. It's not that great, but here we go. Her eyes were like pools of water on a warm summer day when birds are wheeling overhead, singing a lovely song, looking down at the grasses and wildflowers growing on the banks and the bees humming lazily through the hazy, humid air. All right, now, here's the problem. By the time you get to the end of that, you forgot what the heck was talking about. And can I have your book again? I'm sorry. So down below there, I said, here's many Homeric epic similes take you away from the battlefield into nature. Now, look at the numbers. It says 2.539 to 543. Does everybody see that? Here's what that means. Book 2, lines 539 to 543. So I go to book 2, and see how there's line numbers in the margin? So I'm going to see what it is, because I don't even know what this is. I'm going to look it up, and I'm going to look for line 539. Okay, and here's what it is. As ravening fire rips through big stands of timber high on a mountain ridge, and the blaze flares miles away, so from the marching troops the blaze of bronze armor, splendid and superhuman, flared across the earth, flashing into the air to hit the skies. The light is glinting off their armor like wood's on fire. There's so much light, okay? So here's some examples. I just gave them for no reason at all because I could, some examples of epic similes. You will see them very quickly, all right? But here's the thing. It might make you pause and go back to where it started. Like, what were we talking about? Because there's one that's long about bees and there. But sometimes Homer does this. He goes off on his thing, and then he says at the end of it, so were the, like he did there, so were the troops, and he reminds you, he brings you back to it. Don't be afraid. Don't feel like a failure. Oh, I can't remember. Just go back up a few lines. It's only going to be a few lines. You're like, what was happening here? Okay. So my last tip about reading the Iliad. You're reading books 1 through 6 this week. It's really, I mean, it's going to take you some time, but remember this is a 2-credit class. So the time you would normally spend for one class, you would spend, you're done. Book 2 is known as the Catalog of Ships. It is a list of all the different Greek troops that came to Troy. It is not very interesting. Do not think the rest of the poem is going to be like that when you hit that, okay? You do not have to remember all these guys. And so brought troops from some podunk town in Greece that you've never even heard of. Okay, wait, okay. The idea, we'll talk about what his idea is for that later, so I don't want to give that away. But don't worry. I got to look all these guys up in the glossary. No, you don't. Now, if you turn the page in your magical, Mrs. Ferguson's magical Greek guide, you will see a page of writing here. Homer has a contemporary whose works we are not going to read because they are tiresome, in my opinion. His name is Hesiod. Hesiod is our source, though, for much of our information about the gods. So the whole Zeus overthrowing Cronus and the creation and everything, we get this from Hesiod. Hesiod wrote 2 books. The first one, this is an excerpt from, is called Works and Days. Works and Days is sort of like if you had a Bible combined with a farmer's almanac and a Dear Abby column or something like that. It's just a mess. So part of it, it's like he's telling you all about what the gods do, and then he's preaching to his brother that his brother doesn't work hard enough on the farm, and that he'll never amount to anything if he doesn't work harder. And then he starts giving you tips about when to plant your crops. Like, what? Okay, so we're not reading Works and Days, but there's a section of Works and Days that's very famous. This is, ergo, this page. So here's what you're going to do this week. I want you to read this page. And then on the next page it says, what are Hesiod's ages of man? There's a couple of questions for you to answer about this. This whole thing's probably going to take you 10 minutes, all right? And then below that it says questions, the Iliad, books 1 through 6. Now, sometimes I tell you in book 1 or in book 2, occasionally, so turn to page 4 of your wonderful reading. And about the next to last question on page 4 says, in 6:43 through 77, that means in book 6, lines 43 through 77, this is what's happening, okay? So sometimes I refer you to a specific place to look at. So that's what I want you to do. This, by the way, this last page, page 5, it's not all blank because I think it's going to take you an entire page to answer this question. It's because I wanted it formatted so that you would turn the page and then week 2 would start in the next, okay? So you're going to write 6 lines of dactylic hexameter. You're going to read that Hesiod thing and answer the questions. You're going to read the first 6 books of the Iliad. And I have bookmarks. There's a place called Roman Roads Media, and whenever I order from them, they give me these bookmarks. And I wrote to them, I emailed them, and I said, could I buy some? Like, no, we'll give you some if you'll talk about Roman Roads Media. And so they have Homer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can put that in your Iliad.
So it's a marketing scheme.
Yeah.
It is a marketing scheme, except I don't, because they do a great books course, but I don't want you to take theirs, I want you to take mine. Oh, and I have one more thing. Okay, so I printed this off the internet. Okay, so I accidentally did it tiny on the back. I figured out how to do it big.
Look at the smaller picture.
Yeah. So if you want to do the small picture, you could laminate this and it could be a bookmark.
That's a great idea.
So I will have this for you. I don't know. I may email them. Don't know. After all the grief I went through. This is a map of all the people that fought at the, not all the people, but the main troops that fought in the Trojan War and where they're from. Like, I don't expect you to study. There will not be a test on this. No, please don't. But I just thought it's kind of cool because you can see how they came from all over the Greek world. Okay? Are there any questions? Next week we will be back at the Olson's house.
Oh my, wow.
Which is not as good a news for Helena and Jack, but is better news for me because it's closer to my house. Oh, come on in, ladies. Come on in, it's fine. So I will let you go. Goodbye to you guys. I will shut this off. Hey, you know what? We're going to go right in there. I'll be with you in just a moment. Oh, it didn't shut off.